Welcome to Pitch Your Firm. I am your host, Mark Howard, and today we have a very interesting guest. We have John Malone of Anomaly CPA, and I want to give a quick little intro before he goes into his intro. And I promised that I wouldn't do a long intro, but John has so much going, so I'm just gonna roll off a few things, and we're gonna kind of dig into a few of these little tidbits here. So. He's leading a cloud accounting firm, so pretty much 100% in the cloud. They've grown over 4 million in revenue within the last 6 years through 100% organic methods. We'll dive into that. Staff in 15 states, four different countries, and they've been sort of they've been noticed a lot recently over the years. They've been recognized for several awards, including the number one tax strategist in the US for 2023, 2022, 2023, 40 under 40 list by CPA Practice Advisor, and a few more things, another tech award by Accounting Today. So without further ado, John, welcome to the show. Why don't maybe you give a quick little intro and then yeah, we can kind of dive into it.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. A pleasure to be here, and love what you're doing, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff over the last 6 years. It's a little bit overwhelming at times, the journey, but it's been such a great journey. So yeah, a little bit more about Anomaly. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? We're a growing cloud accounting firm. We place a lot of focus on tax strategy on the tax side of the house, and then have kind of built out, a full service accounting team as well. So we've always been building remotely, and that was always kind of our intent, even pre-COVID, right? And then of course, COVID puts gasoline on the fire and makes it a little bit easier for us to do that. So there's been challenges with that. It's been a rewarding journey. But yeah, I'm excited to kind of dive in and talk about, our story a little bit more and what we've been doing, I think, a little bit differently, which is hence our name, Anomaly. Yeah, excited to get into it.
Yeah, yeah. I want to call you out on the name. I love the name, and I do feel like there are a few anomalies.
Yeah,
Let's start with the first anomaly that I'm kind of scratching my head on. Now, maybe I'm a little confused. You are actually a trained lawyer, not a
I am.
CPA. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that
What's the
is
story on that?
Yeah, so that is the number one anomaly for me, right? A non-accountant, leading an accounting firm, someone that went to law school, that became a lawyer, and then decided to completely pivot, right? And yeah, the story behind that, I mean, I think I started to do some work that was kind of like related to tax and tax strategy, kind of in the corporate world, and got a taste for the impact that tax strategy has on business owners, right? And I think that's like personally my main passion is to, optimize business owners, their situations, really kind of take them to the next level. And my partner Greg O'Brien, was kind of doing a lot of tax strategy as well, which under Greg O'Brien CPA PC, Go CPA, which is now Anomaly, right? And then we just decided to join forces, and then have kind of hit the gas on trying to grow this and really trying to make an impact at scale. But for me, yeah, I think that the ability to impact a business was just a lot more was easier. The point of entry was easier, in this industry. And I think you're seeing a lot more, non-accountants, so to speak, um, taking ownership positions in accounting firms. And I think it's great because I think it's a good fresh set of eyes on what is, a great industry to be a part of.
Yeah. Do you feel as though you would have continued to be a lawyer and continued a practice had you not sort of had this opportunity for a CPA firm?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I probably would have, just because
It's
I
what you
think I
did.
think yeah, it's what I did, right? That's what you go to school for. It's what you invest all this time and money in doing. But I don't know, I think that um having been in this industry for 4 or 5 years now, I can see, how it aligns with a lot of the things that I value, and a lot of the things that I enjoy doing and that I'm passionate about doing. So I don't know. I think I might have met the industry some way somehow, no matter what.
But like you said, John, it is a good segue. I mean, there is there's a growing component of accounting that has to do with tax, has to do with legal, right? Particularly
Sure.
tax and tax law, right? So I feel like that's a great synergy, and I want to sort of like get into some of your tax specializations a little later on the show. But I feel like that's a really good synergy to sort of like match that there. So it's a very good foundation. So basically, so you sort of joined up with this firm, and now is it 100% in the cloud, or do you guys actually have offices, or what was sort of the motivation for sort of like going cloud-based and sort of like cloud first?
Yeah, so we do. I mean, we have offices here, like so we're headquartered up in the Boston area, so we have some offices here. So, like I said, myself, my partner Greg, we're both Boston natives, and then we have our director of operations, who's also coincidentally just up here in the Northeast in the Boston area. But everybody else is completely remote. So, and everyone else works from home. That is remote. So there's no other offices in other states or anything like that. I think the motivation was to actually start that way was just more centered around, hey, we just want to get the best talent wherever we can get it, right? We don't want to compete with with the big boys, like especially up here in the Northeast, right? There's like I've heard you talk about on your shows, like there is a shortage of talent. So it's just, hey, we need to find people, we need to find good people, and we'll find them wherever they can be, and we'll make it work. And I think that was just like the attitude that we had, and obviously it became more mainstream, which was fortunate for us. And just because it's mainstream doesn't mean it's easy, but it's something that kind of started out that way.
Yeah. And one of the things we also love to talk about on the show is niches, right? And it can go two ways. It could be sort of like services niches, like whether that's tax advisory and strategy, or specialty tax credits, kind of like what a little bit on sort of like what you guys do, or it
Sure.
could be particular verticals. Let's talk about maybe the verticals right now. So, what are your primary verticals? I think I saw real estate. Is that sort of like the go-to, or what are your primary verticals right now?
Real estate's a big vertical for us, and that's mostly because there's just so much value add that is in the tax code from a tax strategy standpoint that we can provide to clients. So, and we're just well versed in it. So that was always a big vertical for us. I think when you're starting out, you're kind of just like anyone else. You're just taking whatever you can and then trying to figure out the niches that you can get into along the way. And I think we found real estate as one, right? I think on the tax side of the house, we work with, a lot of just growing, growth-oriented entrepreneurs, right? That have, multiple things going on. They have their hands in so many different pots and they just need structure and strategy. We work with a lot of like operating businesses that are turning a profit consistently. And those are generally more um, we call them digitally based businesses. That's kind of how we classify them, but they're just not Main Street kind of brick and mortar businesses because we're, completely cloud based. Our infrastructure just lines up with them. So like marketing agencies, work with a lot of like biotech companies, work with a lot of tech software companies, a lot of like digital creators and those sorts of industries, right? So it's not really confined to a specific vertical. And then there's a lot of overlap, between those two, right? Like you work with the business and the owners, and they invest in real estate. We're really trying to bring the whole picture together for them. And then we work with a lot of like venture-backed companies too, which is not as tax focused necessarily. But we're handling their accounting and a lot of their back office support, and advising them on research and development credit and that sort of thing.
Now, the folks that we usually have on the show, the firms usually range from about 1 million to 20 million in revenue. You guys have an interesting story and sort of your very start. Um, what I find most interesting is sort of the little bumps along the way when you get to
Yeah,
certain revenue hurdles, right? So it's
sure.
like that first 500K, that first 1 million, that first
Yeah.
5 million, which you guys are going to see hopefully pretty soon. And then that $10 million mark. Do you have, I guess for the folks that are maybe not quite at the $4 million mark, was there anything interesting you found in sort of like growth stages from like, say, like 500K to 1 million and going up to 4 million where you are now? Any particular like major issues or constraints? Like I know staffing is a large one for most folks
Yeah.
and they have to really consider that. How about
Yeah.
you?
Man, how long do we have? I don't know. I mean, there's been I think they're probably pretty common, right? At every revenue milestone. I mean, I think that, I listen to a lot of content about the next milestone and like what to expect, right? And you're in a lot of groups, mastermind groups to kind of preempt those things, and do the best that you can. I think for us, yeah, I'd say the biggest thing has been staffing. It's staying ahead of the growth. So, we've been fortunate enough to build kind of a solid marketing engine through like digital marketing efforts where, our lead flow has been pretty consistent, which is amazing. Um, but part of that is like, making sure that you're operationally prepared for that um, and able to walk lockstep with the growth. And you know, I think getting the right people and processes in place on the fly while you're growing is extremely difficult. So we learned that the hard way, and I think most people do. If you want to grow, most people do. We've definitely taken the approach of, figure it out while you're growing versus like figure it out before and then grow. So it's a steep learning curve, and we run on EOS here. So it's just a management methodology from the book Traction. And they always say like if there's a problem, it's either people or process, right? And I think as you grow, those things get exposed pretty quickly. And those have been the biggest challenges for us.
Do you have a particular KPI or metric that you like to watch at a high level? I hear different things. It's like whether it's like number of billable partner hours or the effective hourly rate or revenue per FTE. I mean, there's hundreds out there. Is there any in particular that you guys like to watch?
Yeah, I think for us, like at the highest level, what what I like to just watch is just our gross profit. I think that's like a very simple metric, just to understand like, hey, is our like labor rate, is it completely off whack, at the department level, at the accounting department level, at the tax department level? Um, I want to make sure that so that's like more high level, and then, drilling down to each production team member, what are we doing in terms of like, their, how profitable are we on their book, right? Like what's our margin on their book? So that's kind of how we do it. We don't bill, and we don't track time here. That's like never something that we've been doing. So that might be another anomaly that we are. So that's not some like those types of metrics we don't obviously don't pay too close attention to. But mostly at the department level, we're just making sure that our labor rate and our margin are kind of aligned with, industry standards and reasonable given the amount of, growth that we're anticipating.
Now, if you're not tracking your hours, and I can understand maybe from the client side, and we can talk about pricing in a moment, but how do you know that you guys are actually being the most efficient? So, for example, if you're not looking at things like effective hourly rate, you're not, should this bookkeeping task be 2 hours or should it be 4 hours? How do you know you guys are actually being efficient if you're not tracking those hours? What's kind of gravitating you to say, okay, we don't need to track hours internally because is there like a reason behind that?
I think that, the reasoning, well, I think to answer your first question on like the efficiency component of it, I mean, the way we look at it is someone is handling X amount of revenue and their cost is Y and they're doing it effectively and the client's happy, like we're happy, right? Like just simply put, like that is like that, that's kind of the methodology that we're kind of that underpins the whole thing. And on aggregate, like if you bring it up higher, like at a macro perspective, like if, you know, our labor rate is X, and our gross profit is healthy and our clients are happy, then like that's kind of all we care about. And it just kind of simplifies everything. So that's like that's like how we've always built our models around, like our pricing around, and our capacity system around um, having that revenue-based capacity per employee. So that's like just how we've always done it. And I don't think that we've never really. I think myself and my business partner, even other people around the firm have just had, bad taste in our mouth from like the hourly model and trying to be a little bit different in that respect. And we've certainly taken our lumps and putting together our packages and being on point with pricing and being on point with capacity, and it makes things a little bit um, maybe difficult at the start, but I think we've kind of caught our stride to some degree with that.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit because, for some of the folks that are watching, it's easy to get confused when we have conversations about hours or like tracking hours, right?
Sure.
A lot of firms track hours because they still run and bill hourly, right?
Right.
Which is not your case. You're not tracking hours because you're not billing hourly. You're basically not tracking hours because you don't need to. You've basically built in enough margin to be able to do that, so you don't need to do that on an internal basis. And I can totally understand that, if your margin is good enough, then that's totally understandable.
Sure.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about maybe just kind of going into the fact that you guys are not charging hourly to the client.
Yep.
And if I understand, it's more for sort of like packages. Is it sort of like tiered pricing? I was just kind of looking at the website, and you have kind of and there's always debates about, hey, should we list our fees online? And
Yeah. Right.
we could go back and forth all day. That's not what we're going to talk about today. What we're
Yeah.
going to talk about today is the fact that you do have it online. So I'm seeing things like, R&D credit, cost segregation study, and you're like, listing the fees. I'm not going to say them online because you might actually
Yeah.
go and change those a little later, which is fine. But let me ask you, John, how do you how do you price? I mean, we can talk about this all day, but do you sort of like have bracket, sort of like bronze, silver, gold, or particularly things like on the tax credit side, like R&D credit, cost segregation study. You guys say it starts at a certain amount, which is totally understandable. How do
Yeah.
you actually come up with your pricing for your
Yeah.
service?
Yeah, no, good question. And there's been so many iterations over time, right? So it's that, I mean, that's a journey in and of itself and could take up, more than multiple episodes. But I'll just walk you through kind of a couple of different clients and like how we would think about it. So like we do, for our clients, just say take a tax client, right? So like someone in the verticals that I talked about, maybe it's a real estate investor that has, a pretty significant portfolio, and they come to us and they just say, hey, like we just haven't got any tax help in terms of strategy and advisory. We're just in this relationship where, we just give our accountant the numbers and like they just give us a return. They do an okay job, but like we just know that there's meat on the bone there. So that's like a good client for us. And what we would do is when they come in, we're going to do a deep dive tax plan. We have two tiers there that have two different price points. And that really is going to really set the foundation for like their plan going forward. So we're going to highlight, hey, here are some of like the short term strategies that we're gonna go after right now. And then here are some long-term things that we're going to work towards over the future that we'll revisit in our check-in meetings throughout the year and that sort of thing. So we charge a one-time kind of onboarding investment for that plan. And then everything at our firm, no matter, even if it's just just tax, like it's just a tax engagement. It's monthly fixed fee subscription based. So what they get is, we're not going to bill for communication or, a call here or there. Like everything's included as it relates to meetings. So we say unlimited communication. We do strategy meetings two times per year. So we're doing like projections and estimated payments, and we're making sure that that tax plan is on the tracks, and kind of showing them, hey, if we didn't do this, this is what it would be. But now, since we're doing this, the juice out of that. And then we do a lot of community-based stuff like monthly webinars and weekly knowledge-based articles, kind of like content-based offerings.
Sure.
And then of course we do the tax returns too. So everything kind of gets lumped into that monthly price. And to answer your second question, what goes into that? We do have like internal pricing matrices that we use that kind of allow us to, in a scalable way, deliver what that price is. That's been something that's been iterated over time. Like, initially we're just kind of, I think when you're started out, you're just kind of gut pricing, your value pricing. So you're all over the map, right? Like everything is just there's no consistency, but we realize that you really can't grow and scale that way. So that's where that kind of keeps us honest and brings everything together.
So another thing with in terms of pricing and obviously looking at how much you're charging and how efficient you are, so many different approaches, right? You can some folks are just commanding higher fees or charging more. Others are being more efficient. Maybe they are offshoring. Maybe they are using certain tech to take advantage of efficiency. I want to talk a little bit about tech right now because I think you guys were actually awarded Accounting Today Tech Award not too long ago. So
Sure.
obviously you guys are doing something right with tech. Do you want to talk a little bit about your tech stack? Do you have anything, any particular platforms that you're sort of like that's sort of like your go-to, or how
Sure.
do you
Yeah.
come up with that?
Yeah, I would say like our go-to platform is ClickUp. So we're like a ClickUp power users, which is an industry agnostic workflow tool. And it's just so powerful, right? So it really kind of allows us to do anything. It's an open sandbox. We run our whole company on ClickUp, and it just gets better and better every week, because of how much that they do in terms of updates. It's definitely something where I would caution a firm jumping into that type of solution because it is so open, and it's industry agnostic. So it's not like your core workflows, you're going to have to build them out, right? And you could get help to do that, but there's a lot more freedom to kind of do what you want, which I think can be, for a certain situation, might not be the best solution, right? It's not like Carbon or some of the industry tools that are kind of dialed in on what the general workflows are.
Were
Um,
you running this from day one? Were you running ClickUp from day
ClickUp,
one?
no. ClickUp's probably been we've been using ClickUp for two a little bit over 2 years. Before that, we were using like an industry tool, Jetpack Workflow, and yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the how ClickUp has made us more efficient. We
Well,
use.
what was Yeah,
Go ahead.
go for it.
Well,
Well,
and I
I guess my question is like, what is
yeah
that pivotal moment? Because there's there's a lot of folks that are just obsessed with their practice management system, and
yeah
I always say it's really not about the tech. It's about the
no
people. It's about the processes. I mean, you're an EOS guy. You totally get it, right? But
yeah
so I guess it's like, but at some point you're like, hey, this system is probably not working for us, so we need to go to another system. Now, I know a lot of firms that use ClickUp. I'm not going to, vouch for any particular software on here unless it's one of the softwares that I actually run. Um,
yeah
but the thing about that is you're right. ClickUp is it's not designed specifically for accounting firms, right? It's not
right
like like a Carbon or Jetpack or any of these others that are like specifically for accountants. So,
sure
but it's interesting because just like you said, you really have to sort of like design, you have to create your entire workflows. And I think there's a lot of templates they make for, accountants and bookkeepers and all that, which is helpful. But it's not like, hey, out of the box, we're gonna be up and running. You're gonna have to build, your own like, work in progress. Lots of work goes into
Totally.
that. So now you guys have basically started a couple years ago. Did you basically build all that together in-house yourself? Did you have sort of like an external consultant help you with that, or?
We built it all. Yeah, we built it all. I think we ClickUp offers like some level of like implementation to start. And we did that, but like, we built it and then we scrapped it. We've changed it. And I think that's like the good part about it is like you can change it, right? Like if it doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
then then you can change it, right? Like I think people have to like rethink like workflow every now and then, right? Like you don't want to be stuck in a box. Like if something's more efficient, then you should just do it. Like and I think we need to be nimble in making those decisions. And ClickUp allows us to do that. But that's not for everybody, right? Like that's not, and I think there's times where we have new team members come on board, they're on board and they look at ClickUp and their head explodes. So it's like, like that's it, it's that's a part of it too. The other thing I'd note, Mark, is that like we do, another thing that's a little bit different about us is we do invest like in non-production staff, I think more than most firms our size. So like we have a director of IT that's a full-time employee. Like I said, I noted we have a director of operations who's still involved in production, but like, runs our operations. And we have some offshore that help with, tech and admin and that sort of thing. So I think that that's a little atypical for firms our size, but it goes to the point of like, those people are integral in our ClickUp build out and like those sorts of things.
Yeah, and it's one of these things. I think I've had a couple conversations on some of these episodes where we get a little bit more into technology, and it's an interesting situation right now, John, and it's interesting that you guys have chose something like ClickUp. And again, I'm not vouching for anything, but it's interesting that. So, like, ClickUp is a platform that you guys have tailored to use for your firm, and you
Mhm.
use it for a lot of things. However, it's not accounting first, right? But like you also said, it's very versatile, so you can use it for other things.
Sure.
Like other like workflows or onboarding, different other parts of the practice. Whereas a lot of other specific practice management applications, they're basically that, just like practice management. They're not going to do the other, tasks, maybe whether that's, client facing or the other little silos that you have to do. So that means a lot of firms are using, two, three, four, five, six different software platforms for different things, whereas you can do a lot of this with ClickUp by just building out different modules and the fact that they sort of ClickUp talks to each other, these different modules, it kind of makes it easier for you. So as you scale, sure, it's more of a custom thing, but everything is kind of tied together and you're not looking for a bunch of fancy integrations. And is that
Totally.
sort of like been your
Oh
understanding as
yeah.
well?
Yeah, because you learn the lesson, like one of those pain points in like growing a remote or a cloud firm, right, is like just the software, is like the shiny objects, right? Like it's pretty easy to have 100 tools like, quickly, right? And people get confused and things get fragmented and there's redundant costs and that sort of thing. So we've definitely made an effort to just be as lean as we can, but also be ahead of the curve from an innovation perspective. And ClickUp allows us to do that because you can do so much in it. And I think we want that. Like, there's nothing in our firm that we do that's not done in ClickUp, right? From an admin perspective, from a team onboarding, client onboarding, obviously client workflow, like EOS type stuff. There's literally nothing. We build our internal knowledge bases in it. So like, because it has like the docs function. And I think like now with more AI adoption internally, we want the whole brain of the company to be there, right? So then they can just chat and easily look up, get answers that we want them to get, right? Technically or otherwise. And that's kind of like the, the direction that we want to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if I recall, I believe you had sort of like ClickUp join the call. It's sort of like a call
Yeah.
recording part as well. So you guys are just yeah, hey, if ClickUp is watching this, yeah, if you guys want to sponsor this podcast, we're having a very good session. No, just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah, that's for sure.
But
But
you know,
I do
it's
agree with you, your original point though. Like
yeah,
it's not the, as much as I love it, and I think a lot of people love it, it's not about the software, right? It's about the people. It's about the culture and the processes that you put in place. But most importantly, it's about the people, right? You could be in this, I'm sure you're in these conversations all the time where it's like, hey, what system should I use? This, that, and the other thing. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's like, it's not a magic bullet, So you got to have, the people to do it, the people to adopt it, the people to push it forward.
absolutely, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about growth. You mentioned that you guys are 100 or near 100% organic, which is, I'm not going to say, unheard of for a firm of your size, but it's certainly commendable. So, what's when you say 100% organic, is that sort of like referrals, word of mouth? You guys have just done, a bunch of content? LinkedIn. I think we met each other on LinkedIn.
Yep.
What do you mean by 100% organic? Like where is that coming from? And why did you guys not decide to do things like, paid ads or things like that?
Yeah, so organic, I think organic for us just means like there's been no acquisitions or anything like that. So it's
Mhm.
just been all, you know, grassroots, grinding,
Yeah.
our own marketing. So we do a lot of digital marketing, right? Like you've seen us on LinkedIn. We produce a lot of content. I think, when I say a lot, I think just relatively speaking in the industry, right? It's pretty easy to stand out in this industry, I think, from a content perspective. And we do paid ads. We do paid ads. That's a part of our marketing strategy. Of course,
Mhm.
referrals are a part of it, right? And those become that becomes a larger and larger piece as you grow, right? But I think the vast majority of our efforts and our marketing plan is focused on digital marketing. So that's, content production, which is more, brand awareness and just kind of growing the brand. We do a lot of blogging, we do a lot of SEO, we do a lot of paid ads. But that's what we mean about when we say like organic.
Yeah. And are you guys doing that mostly in-house, or are you working with an agency for a lot of the marketing capacity?
Yeah, we do work with an agency for that. So they handle. We're actually have, that's one of the things. We do have a couple partners there. We have a partner that does our SEO. Um, we have an agency that kind of runs our content, through all the platforms that we just discussed, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and also and then we have another partner that does our Google ads. So, I think what we've learned there is that um, those are different niches too. And sometimes an all-in-one solution isn't the best there. So we just try to find the best people that are going to make an impact across those functions.
Now, when you were talking about organic in the sort of in the growth sense, in the sense that you have not done acquisitions, have acquisitions come to mind in terms of, firms that you guys are looking, maybe any particular niche players? And the other flip side of that question is, and I'm sure you've gotten, one of these, hey, I want to buy a firm cold emails. Have you guys considered actually being acquired or, part of a roll-up strategy or anything of that nature?
Yeah. So the first part, like us targeting acquisitions, I don't, it's never been like something that we've set out to do. Um, and it's never, I think we look at it like our cost of, acquiring organic customers is so much lower than the cost of an acquisition. So, so why would we do it? But I think we've also recognized that there can be efficiencies to doing it, right? Like obviously it's a faster track. You could acquire some really good people. So if the appropriate situation came up, I think it's something we would certainly look into, right? But I don't know that that's really a part of like what our vision is. That's kind of how we feel about that. And then on the flip side, yeah, I mean, there's been people knocking on the proverbial door, so to speak, at times, right? And some of those conversations are we've had some of those conversations, and they're interesting, and I think it's encouraging, just at least it's encouraging from my perspective, just the interest in the industry, and no matter who it is, right, whether it's private equity or whatever, I think it's great for the industry in my view. And I don't think that that's something that we're looking to do in the short term. Maybe in the longer term at some point. But you know, we're kind of laser focused on growing and sustainably growing. Building our people up. We have a great team, and just kind of continuing on in the mission. So that's kind of where we're at in the short term.
And you mentioned top line growth a lot, well, a few times, during this conversation. And there's so many different factors in terms of valuation, right? Some folks look at it in terms of like gross, some EBITDA, some future cash flow. There's different factors, earners discretionary earnings.
Yeah.
So in terms of you guys, obviously revenue is important. You're at about 4 million. I'm assuming that you want to get to that next major hurdle, which is 10 million.
Yeah.
Do you have a timeline for that to get to that point?
Yeah. I mean, I think our target has always been like, hey, we want to grow around like, between 20 and 30% a year over year. And obviously that gets harder and harder. Um,
Sure.
and sometimes like we talked about, like there's lumps involved there. And it's like, do we want to take these lumps? I don't know. But I think our 3-year target, um, from this the start of this year, um, is to be, over six. And then I know like our 10-year target, which is these are all EOS targets too, by the way. Our 10-year target, which was done, a year ago. So I guess we're at nine or 8.5 years now, was to be over 15. So that's like that sustainable growth pattern, growing in that rate year over year. So, I don't know where 10 kind of fits in, but somewhere between the, you know, 5, 6 years from now. So that's the approach that we're taking on that.
And as a innovative firm and a very tech savvy firm, one of the things I want to kind of almost just about wrap up is just in terms of tools. Now, we talked a little bit about software. Do you guys actually have any kind of internal tools that you've built? Any sort of whether that is any kind of custom models or any particular templates that you use specifically uh, for your firm, and or tools that you find that other uh, partners use. And the reason why I ask you this is because on a couple of shows now, I happen to be speaking to people that have been developing their own tools, right? So
Yeah.
maybe certain dashboards, whether it's our revenue dashboards, referral dashboards, a lot of interesting things. And
Sure.
I find it interesting because sure, there's like software platforms you can buy, but then some of the most innovative firms are kind of like building their own tools. And I promote a few of those on our firm level site because I find them fascinating, and I find it that a lot of accountants can actually share these tools as well. Do you have any sort of like whether that's like Excel or Google Sheets or anything like that that you guys are building internally? Or has it mostly been sort of like off the shelf software and ClickUp and sort of like more
No, yeah,
formal?
no, we're always like building stuff. Some stuff sticks, some stuff doesn't. But I guess first what we're always doing is, using the our tech stack and just optimizing it from an, automation standpoint. What can we do to make everything more efficient and talk to each other more, right? So that's like one piece, right? I know that wasn't exactly your question. And then we use other tools on the accounting side for dashboarding, right? We use live flow to do some dashboarding. So that obviously is not something that we built, but we do customize that quite a bit. And like we were early adopters with live flow. So I feel like there's to some degree we've collaborated quite a bit on how to deliver useful insights to our clients. And then we have been building tools internally, um, with our some of our IT team, in terms of building just our own dashboards for tax strategy tracking. A lot of these strategies require tracking, um, that we're looking to automate and looking to be visible in real time to our clients, and really be able to, with the goal of making it easy for tax prep, but also to be able to just show the value that we're bringing to our clients on a regular basis. I think that's something that we want to be more mindful about, right? Like we're always, everyone on our team is very focused on, what strategies are applicable to our clients and how we can drive those home. But I think sometimes what gets lost is, like the actual dollar impact that we're making, for or that they're experiencing. So we're trying to build some tools to show that and to make that easier for us internally. So that's going to be hopefully a big push over the next year or so.
And where I'm kind of going with this and sort of staring is because I'm seeing some of the more innovative firms, when I say creating their own products, they're basically productizing. And productizing means different things to different people, right?
Sure.
Um, on one hand, we have productization in terms of services, right? So, for example, you have your, say, your cost segregation study, you have your R&D credits. There are literally, and I don't have to tell you this, like companies that just focus on like these particular things, right? R&D
Yeah.
tax credit. We actually, one of our first shows was on a firm that, did 20 million. They focus on R&D
Wow.
tax credits. Yeah. I'm sure you know them. And then cost segregation studies, right? There are companies that focus specifically on that. There are firms that specifically focus on that niche. Now, as you know, there's a large services component to that, right? There's a lot
Right.
of moving pieces from, R&D credits and, cost segregation studies, but I'm seeing more software sort of coming up to kind of fill that gap. Do you guys see yourself maybe, let's just say, with both of these specialty kind of tax credits, that on average there's like X hours that it takes for each of these things. Do you kind of see yourself like building any products around it where you can maybe actually take advantage of doing it a lot faster or even offering it as more of like a monthly subscription sort of thing, just basically developing your own product? Or is that a little bit too out in left field for sort of like your focus right now?
Well, no, it's not. It's not definitely not out of left field. I mean, I think we definitely want to be involved in that, in the development of those solutions that, can help those productized services. I don't know, and I don't know if this is what you meant, but I don't know that the market, like the consumer market, is really ripe for something like that, like on those two particular pieces, right? Like cost seg or R&D, because at the end of the day, they're still going to need the professional to deliver it and to report it. Um, but I do think that there's opportunity, where building solutions for the professional to be able to deliver those services, those productized services, and make it a lot easier and increase margin and those sorts of things. Um, but I think, to answer your question from a high level, like, yeah, those thoughts are flying around all the time, and what can we do to be a part of that? Because with AI and with every all the capabilities out there, there's just there's going to always be a lot of downward pressure on those things. Um, and, I think, but there's also opportunity as well.
Yeah, yeah, and productization is a bit of a obsession of mine. My companies have all started with like tiny little products and sort of like
Right.
grown from there. So like for example, like cost segregation, right? There's right there. It can go very deep, right? At the deep end, you have to have engineers involved. You have
Right.
to have, it's a very formal analysis. I've seen some companies out there, John, that are basically where you kind of do a DIY cost segregation, where you
Sure.
kind of get like basic measurements and kind of get like an idea of that. And they are basically, selling initial reports for cost segregation, initial estimates from that basic assessment that you can basically do online. And then you get a ballpark figure. And then if you want something more formal that you need to take other places, then obviously you get the engineer involved.
Right.
So the way I see it, John, and just using this example, cost segregation, since you guys are doing that, it's like I see different pieces of the value chain, right? I see at the very entry point, it starts with an assessment, right? Hey, does cost segregation make sense for us? And if it
Right.
does, what is sort of like, what are we looking at? Does it make sense for us to spend a few $1,000, getting the engineer involved yet, or can we just start with like a couple $100 assessment to kind of see like, okay, this is maybe a pass for us at this point, right? So I just kind of see like there's this different parts of the value chain, and what I find really interesting is that firms that are, not trying to reinvent the entire wheel, but I'm seeing firms that have like niche specific, like I said, like firms that are just focused on like cost segregation initial reporting, cost segregation initial assessments, right? And then those are doing like handoffs to engineers. So I just see like this it's a vertical, but it's also sort of like different horizontals on that. So yeah, I
Yeah.
find it
No,
pretty
totally.
fascinating. I think it's a great time to be in these two particular specialty tax credits. So
Right.
yeah, I love where you guys are going with that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, those are great points. And I think the biggest thing is, like I said, and like you just alluded to, is that it is definitely a time of opportunity on multiple different fronts. And I think, we just want to be a firm that embraces that opportunity, with technology and some of the different applications it has to, what we're already doing. Like it can not only there's the opportunity that is like outside to everyone else, but there's also the opportunity that can just make us more efficient and deliver, a higher level service.
Then I'll kind of end with like, do you have any particular like, if you could wave a wand and just make something happen or change in the industry, what do you feel like the biggest constraint is for you guys right now? Like, what do you really want to see happen? Let's just say in the next, 1 to 2 years. We kind of dabbled on a couple things like AI and sort of like how that's taking over. Is there any big fundamental change or shift in the industry that you'd like to see, or do you kind of see it as just a bunch of like small moving pieces that eventually get to your goal?
Um, yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think, um, I mean, I can only go to like where I think our biggest pain points are, and that is, I think, and it's what I said, like, that's been our pain point all along, and I'm sure this never ends, right? It's just, staying ahead of the growth, like um, getting the right people in here at the right time, and I think a lot of people are struggling with that, right? There's obviously you hear the reports is there's just less and less tax and accounting professionals and CPAs and there's everyone's grinding to get people in, really using every means necessary. And so I would like that to change, make that if that could be easier, that would be great. Um, and I think we've looked to different areas to do that, right? Like we definitely take a different approach in how we're doing that. And we've looked offshore and we have such a great offshore team, and I'm so thankful that we took that plunge to do that. But I think for me, like if I was to wave a wand, it's just to solve kind of that issue, and to be more um, systematic and certain about those things.
Speaking of offshore, is there any advice that you would give to other firm owners that are sort of thinking about offshoring right now in terms of either, how you are selecting those teams or whether you're just going kind of like the 1099 route versus just working directly
Sure.
with that team? Any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess my thought would just be do it. I think it's but we do a little bit of both. Like we do have some direct hire and we do, we work with some like outsourcing companies, so we do a little bit of both. Obviously the direct hire component is just a lot more, it's just a lot more work. In terms of sourcing and vetting and that sort of thing, and onboarding, right? Because with your systems and hardware and all those types of things. So I would say, I guess I would just say, like, I don't know. We wouldn't be where we're at without our offshore team. I think that they play such a vital role in what we're doing, and how we're growing, and they're, it's a great group to work with on a daily basis. So I'm very thankful for them. I'm very thankful for, our entire team, and how hard they work. But if we're talking specifically to offshore, I don't really see any downsides of doing it. And I do think to some degree that if you're not doing it, um, I think there's, you're gonna be one of the few people that aren't at some point, because it's got a lot of benefits.
Absolutely. Well, John, this has been great. And for folks that are looking to, if anyone wants to get in touch with you or learn a little more, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's a great spot. Like I know it's where we connected, Mark. So you can always message me on LinkedIn. We have our social media platforms too, which are worth checking out, at Anomaly CPA and Instagram and YouTube. And then, anyone can email me. It's John at anomalycpa.com. And yeah, would love to. This stuff is always exciting to talk about. So would love to connect with anyone that's, ahead of us on the milestone tracker, or is, hitting the ceiling on different marks. So love kind of talking through those journeys.
Well, we'll definitely have to get you back on the show. It seems like you guys are clocking awards. Maybe at the next 5 award benchmark, we can pull you back or the 10 million mark, whatever one comes first. But John, it's been a pleasure to have you. Appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Mark.